Are we aging faster than we should be?
Yes and yes. Our biological age is older than the candle on the birthday cake.
We believe that it's a scientific fact you need to die to see cancer cells living forever. And that's one of the evidences why we believe that we might have to look at aging as a disease instead.
I'm completely with you, Mats. We could do something against it.
Many people are committing a slow suicide today in the Western science. But I've seen how we've been able to reverse aging in the positive side.
That was just a teaser of what we will be discussing today. My name is Niels. I'm co-founder and COO of Scandinavian Biolabs, and I'll be the host of this podcast. Today I'm joined by two really interesting guests. Dr. Stephan Barth has spent more than 20 years studying how our cells, lifestyle, and nutrition affect aging. From a veterinary and medical research to a postdoc at the world-renowned Max Planck Institute, Dr. Barth has seen it all within this field. He's worked with top global pharma companies, helped build cutting-edge health startup, and now you consult on the future of longevity science. How does that sound for an introduction?
Great. Thanks, Niels.
We're very happy to have you. And joining us too is Friis, a keynote speaker and coach, an expert within longevity and biohacking. With a background in business and psychology from CBS and Harvard, Mads has helped entrepreneurs and high performers optimize their health and mindset, including reversing their biological age. He's also the author of Winning Habits and Routines and has hosted a top Scandinavian podcast where you interviewed more than 100 experts, Mads. Impressive CV of yours there. Warm welcome, Mads.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Before we dive into the nitty-gritty part, I want to make sure that we're on the same page about what is actually longevity and what is it not. What are the myths out there? Stephan, can you give me your definition of longevity?
The short form of definition is quite easy. Everybody knows about the total number of years in a life. And in average, in Europe, it's about, depending on the sex, between 78 and 82. And longevity is something connected to the total number of years, but meaning the number of healthy years. So the life expectancy is the lifespan, and longevity means the health span. And the dramatic thing is that there is a huge gap between the lifespan and the health span, which is in Germany, and I bet in Denmark it's similar, around about 15 years of gap between the health span and the lifespan. And the goal for longevity interventions is to close this gap.
So I very much agree. I think the simplest way is to look at health span and lifespan. Yes. Lifespan is, as Stephan says, how many years do you turn? Yeah. Health span is how many years are you feeling good? And we want to increase both. We don't just want to do increasing the amount of years that we are living, which for many end up being held the last 5 to 10 years or 15 years that you're saying. We want to make sure that we increase the number of healthy, good living years and then also increase the lifespan. So for me, that's right. the intersection of longevity, increasing lifespan, but also health span. And I don't want to increase my lifespan if I don't increase the health span. Then I'll rather go out at 80 instead of 150 if the last 70 years was going to be sick years.
Yeah. Exactly. So no lifespan without the health span. It's like that's the important driver here.
Of course, they are best buddies. Yeah. But the really healthy target is the health span. So right. Because it has no asset living long when the last 30 years really suck.
Right.
Yeah. I think if you do the definition of what is hell, it's instant pain. Like when we talk about hell, right? It's pain, not really understanding where you are and so on, and just agony, right? And many people today in our society end up having many years that you could define very close to hell. In constant pain, they don't longer remember themselves, they don't remember their loved ones and so on. So that's something that you hear a lot in longevity circles. That's really not what we're trying to increase. And then we would rather go out with full energy. And I think a really good example is a kite surfer that he died on the kite spot when he was 87. He was called Old Paul. He was the oldest kite surfer in the world, right? And like I get the goosebumps just thinking about like he was living. He was living till the very end, and then you want to drop dead doing the thing that you love but had some good years, right?
Having fun.
Yeah, very, very admirable, and I think we can all testament to that. Perhaps each of us knows somebody who's gone out like that. This imagination of this person at 87, that's really something to think about and to admire. I think so. I want to know what the biggest myths you see are out there about longevity. Mads?
I would say that one pill is going to cure it all. I see a lot in the biohacking circles and also longevity circles. This huge focus on pills. And then they don't have social connections, they're lonely, or they don't exercise, or they don't get they probably have food all right dialed down, but that a pill is just going to save it all. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
It's a good point, and I completely agree. And through this, many have the idea that longevity costs lots of money because those supplements are normally really expensive. But coming back to your question, Niels, I think a very dangerous misconception is in this context that many people think we are victims of our genes and could not do anything related to promoting health or stopping aging. So victims of genes really sticks in so many people's heads. And this is completely wrong. Meanwhile, science has proved that round about 70-80% of what happens regarding aging, longevity, health, prevention is in our hand and is lifestyle based. And that's really a dangerous mindset, still being a victim and not to do anything for its own health and longevity in the end. And so that's something which has to be better communicated, that we are not at all victims of our genes.
Okay.
I would like to second that.
Yes.
So when I was saying the pills is for the people that are in the longevity circles, that are like looking into longevity and so on. But I definitely agree, Stephan, for like the general population is like thinking like, well, I just have bad genes. And of course there can be genes in certain diseases that there's not much to do. But most things when we look at heart diseases or cardiovascular diseases and so on, right? I remember I was talking to some professors in Germany that came out of one of the best institutes as well. They looked into like, I think they said 80% of cardiovascular disease was lifestyle. And then there were 20% that was actually genes, according to their research. And then if you are aware of those genes in time and you do the right testing, then most of that cardiovascular things you can get around, but you just need to
compensate
exactly
by lifestyle.
Where the most people, 80% just by living a certain amount would be fine, but the last 20% you needed to live a bit more strict or certain things that you need to consider, right?
Okay. So genes play a role, but currently we are attributing too much value to what they can do, or we're considering that we are victims, we're subjected to the genes, whereas the knowledge of these genes, that they perhaps even can be influenced with our knowledge, understanding that gives us maybe immense power over these effects.
Right.
Okay. In this next session, I want to explore together with the two of you whether hair is just superficial or if it says something more about what's happening underneath as you age. Dr. Stephan, I want to ask you, how are things like sleep and stress actually linked to hair health?
Very good question, Niels. And you surprised me with the context you built between gut and hair. And based on actual and very recent research, there is some indication that there is some functional connectivity between the gut inside our organism and the hairs on top of our organism. And this I would start to explain and then come back to your question, what about stress and poor sleep? Okay. Because it's the same story. 20 years ago, the gut was black box, stinky black box, and the function was digestion. That's it. Meanwhile, research has really shed light into this black box, and we are really surprised about the complex functionalities of the gut. 70% of the immune system is located close to the gut or within the gut lining. A few decades ago, the famous microbiome was discovered, and these inhabitants in our gut are really biofermenters. They are building vitamins. The whole vitamin B family is synthesized by the microbiome, which many people doesn't realize, that we have such a biofermenter of vitamins inside our body, and in consequence, and now the hairs get into the play. In consequence, all the B vitamins have to reach, of course, the system. And the microbiome is also responsible for the leakiness of the gut lining, so also responsible that the vitamins they produced also reach the body and the generational side of the hairs, because the B vitamins nourish, very partially nourish, and promote the growth of hairs. And this is what research is calling the gut-hair axis. There are some other processes, inflammation and the leakiness of the gut lining, which also interact with the immune system, also has impact on the hair growth and the hair health. And all these processes, which go in a good shape and in a good direction in healthy status, are disrupted by stress. And when you could imagine when the microbiome is in disbalance, then the vitamin synthesis would not happen. And the B vitamins, which are very important for hair growth, disappear or are in the system in a much lower concentration. And that's something what stress is really in the end doing with the interactor of the microbiome, stressing the hair health through disbalancing the microbiome. And it's a complex story, but the organism is complex. And for sure, stress is one of the most toxic agents regarding the systemic health and also the hair health.
It's extremely interesting to hear about this gut-hair axis and how it's related. Is it also related to aging, this gut-hair axis?
Aging in hairs, yes. And there are many axes originating in the gut and in the microbiome, where in the end not the hairs or the skin are the best buddies of the intestine, but the liver, the brain, which is a very famous axis, how to explain that the risk for depression increases when people have intestinal inflammation. Right. So that's the gut-brain axis. And through this, the intestinal health has really impact for the entire organism's health. Right.
So
and also for the aging process.
Well, for the same reason. Okay, there's a very clear relationship here.
Right.
Understood. So what are the specific lifestyle factors that can help with hair regeneration and prevent thinning through the gut-hair axis?
So kind of follicular biohacking, Mats, right?
Yes.
Perhaps there are four pillars supporting hair health, also integrating the gut health, and the first two pillars, which we already mentioned, is for sure sleep, good sleep quality, and the best body of this is stress management, because high cortisol levels, that's really well known by research, is really damaging also the the follicles of hair growth. And so that's something which not only helps the entire organism and, of course, the intestinal health, but directly the hair health as well. And in Scandinavia, you have this Nordic diet. I'm a very big fan of, not so far away from the Mediterranean diet. And this dietary pattern is really superfood for intestinal health. So fermented food, fibers,
yes,
high content in vegetables and fruits, bringing these famous fancy polyphenols, antioxidants, and energy spending ingredients into the body. Omega-3 fatty acids, right, of course, from the famous Danish fish.
Yes.
I had just half an hour ago.
Yeah.
And so that's really something for the entire system, but especially also for the intestinal ecosystem. Very good. And last but not least, the mitochondrial support. What I already said is the hair growth is a very energy demanding process. And so it really makes sense to take care to the cellular powerhouses. Wow. So these fancy mitochondria, they have a very central role also in the aging process. And so it really makes sense to place the mitochondria as the fourth pillar into my follicular biohacking recipe. And that's something which is really very beneficial for the entire organism, but also for the hair health.
Wow. Some of the listeners are going to hate me for saying this, but you actually have a free way of looking into how is your gut health. Ideally, every day, you go into the porcelain guard that you might have known from when you were a teenager and you were like praying down to it after big nights of drinking. But that wonderful toilet as well, look down and see what's coming out. And that's why you're not going to like it. But there you can actually see a kind of indicator of how is your gut health. It's called the Bristol scale. So you want it to be a perfect German sausage in consistency. Look it up. Again, that's why you're not going to like me saying it. Yeah. But if you look up Bristol scale, it will tell you something about how your poop should ideally look. And that will tell you something about if it's completely off. A better way is also to get a good gut test where you actually, even nicer, have to scoop up this poop, put it into a bag, send it into a laboratory where someone has the best job in the world of having to take that out and grow the poop so they can see what bacteria you have. But the free way is just look down into the toilet.
It's an incredible way of both giving a lot of credit to the Nordic diet, and ideally it ends up as a German sausage in the toilet. That's, I think, is very brilliant way.
Perhaps better mention the British sausage.
Okay. Mads, you have a lot of experience working with high performers. So how do these men and women maintain healthy hair?
So to be honest, it's not the thing that we discuss the most. when we look into the fundamentals, as Stephan talked about as well, and we can define them different ways. But I think most people agree: sleep, stress, the mindset in general, the exercise, what you eat, your social relationships. Some of those are kind of the fundamentals, and that's what we look at. And they all contribute, as Stephan says, to the hair health. Some also, I work with a lot of people that have good budgets. They then buy something like photobiomodulation, some red light that they put on top of their head. So that's kind of like a cap that lights down that can help you actually regrow the hair, or they buy products like yours to also assist it. So it is something people care about, just like they care about skin health. The easy things are products like yours. It's really easy with the shampoo that you can use. And then also if you get the routine, something I work with people a lot on is getting the routines, and then you can get the serum in, right? So it's about making it easy in the day-to-day life apart from the fundamentals.
We have talked now about genes and their values. We have talked about how your gut influences your hair health, your aging, how biohackers and high performers out there are trying to navigate some of these things. I want to bring into the next topic, and now we go one step deeper into the science behind this all. So we have now a solid grasp of what longevity really means. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. When we talk about living longer, it's not just about counting the birthdays. That we already established. What is actually happening inside our bodies as we age? What is going on at a cellular level? What is going on a cellular level? And how much of aging is actually in our control? We're getting into the really interesting stuff. Epigenetics and aging. Stephan, tell us about what how do I even say it correctly? Epigenetics?
Epigenetics should be correct. And I want to explain it and want to use a kind of metaphor. We all know our mobiles and the hardware. And translated to our organism, the hardware or the operating system are the genes. So they are quite static and not changing so much like the hardware of the mobile. And epigenetics, these are these colorful, dynamic, interactive software apps which are very responsive. They activate something in the mobile or shut it down. And these are exactly epigenetic mechanisms to switch on or switch off the genes. And through this, determine the functional status of cells, tissues, and organs. And in the end, the whole organism. So that's how I would explain epigenetics, like software applications. Translated to the aging process, in the last 15 years, the so-called hallmarks of aging have been described and discovered, very nitty-gritty in basic sciences. And there are, depending on the papers you are looking at, between 12 and 16 systems, pathways, concepts in our body which determine how we age.
What is an example of an epigenetic
The
pathway?
microbiome, for example.
Okay.
The microbiome is a very strong determinant for the aging process. It's a real hallmark of aging, whether the microbiome is in balance or disbalance. The mitochondria is a hallmark of aging as part of the energy metabolism. Autophagia, that's a kind of get the waste, rid of waste system, recycling system to get rid of harmful substances from. So inflammation is also a hallmark of aging. And these processes are not isolated, but connected through our fancy software apps, the epigenetic processes, to the environment and to our lifestyle. And so that's the bridge building thing, this fancy epigenetics, to get access through our lifestyle deep into our cells. Okay. So it's a kind of bridge or translating system, modulate these hallmarks of aging in a way that we experience longevity.
If epigenetics is the if epigenetics are the apps,
yes,
on your hardware operating system, what is then the App Store?
The App Store, that's a good question. Mats, what would you say? The App Store. So who is responsible for these fancy epigenetic dynamic apps?
I think the easier way of just seeing it is that you can turn on and off genes. Epigenetics is when we talk about the simplest way, as you're saying as well.
Yeah.
And then the really interesting thing to talk about is how do we turn them on and off? Like, what are the things that we can do today, which is so fantastic that we're like finding new technologies. We have things that we know are working and we are coming up with new technologies. And that's where I believe that we're going to live to 150. I feel certain I'm going to be 150 because I come from technology as well. And we see things that we said was impossible. It was never possible to fly. And so many people today are sitting and coming from the industry saying, like, you're never going to be able to get 140 or 150, where I think these things we know working and then these new technologies, it's so fascinating. So I'd be curious, like, Stephan, what makes you most excited when we talk about longevity, things that we can actually do? I know I have mine, but I'll let you go first.
But I will tell you later, but coming back to your question, I think companies or public units, people who understand the science and are able to translate it into health solutions, into products, into services which specifically target those pathways. These are the heroes of the App Store.
Right.
Because that's really a step further compared to the trivial anti-aging. This is completely different now because we know so much about our internal and the pathways, so that we are able to specifically target those pathways in a way that we can modulate it into the direction of longevity. So those are perhaps the heroes, not the owners, but the heroes of the web store.
That's the top 10 lists there. Right. But Mads, have you seen reversal of signs of aging?
Yeah. So different things. I think we talk about the hallmarks of aging. One of them is also senescent cells and telomere length. And I think an Israeli study was so fascinating. It was done with around 30 individuals, people that were over, I think, 63 years or older. And they got this one intervention, which was hyperbaric oxygen chambers, which is an old technology that we've been using for many years for divers and so on. And they got the exposure of only going into these hyperbaric oxygen chambers. I think it was for 90 days, and they had to go 60 days. They did nothing else. And they managed to extend telomere length with 20%. We don't have any lifestyle that just increases telomere length with 20%. Otherwise, I would love to hear about it. There might be new studies and so on. And senescent cells, we want to increase telomere length and we want to decrease senescent cells. And the senescent cells, another of the hallmarks of aging, got reversed or like got shorter. So we have the lifestyle and then we have cool technologies. Some of them are even technologies that we have today that we're just figuring out we can use another way. And that to me is super fascinating.
Right. Are there other examples of technologies that are already available?
So all the lifestyle and you can talk about. So I see with some of my clients, we do a super biological age test. There's no biological age test that's perfect, but I think you should get the guy behind it, the professor that actually did all the research. They have quite good research where they have it up with the Dundee study in New Zealand, which is one of the biggest databases they have with big studies as well in Denmark. So they actually have fairly good data on how you can use this biological aging. And I had several of my clients that we managed to reverse their age. Yeah. So some of them are already younger than their chronological age. So these were healthy people. And with simple things as lifestyle changes. Here we're talking about not complex, expensive stuff. Some of them getting more protein, a bit more resistant training, better sleep, for example, adding magnesium as well for sleep as well. And they managed to reverse 2 years of their biological age from already impressive results. So I think as you're saying as well, it doesn't always have to be super expensive. You don't need a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, even though I would love to have one with they're like 500,000 Danish crowns. I think you might be able to get them to 250,000. Not sure. Would you have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber?
No, not really. No, not really.
But you have something on lifestyle. This is your big.
Hooking the very important hallmark of aging, the thing with the senescent cells, which are I always translated into zombie cells. Okay. So these are really not really dead, but not really living, and they are harming the surrounding cells. And so these are really killers and increasing inflammation, by the way. So another hallmark of aging. So it's a kind of devil cycle in this sense. And there are so many plant ingredients which work like senolytics. So they help us getting rid of those zombie cells. And when you know the food which contain those senolytic food ingredients, plant ingredients, secondary metabolites in a higher concentration, you could selectively compose your diet in a way that you get rid of zombie cells quite easily.
But Stephan, you've been doing so much research on that. What are like some of the top things that you would recommend that we go home and do afterwards?
You mean senolytic or
you talked about in either the herbs or the diet and so on, the things that we could eat more of that's super concrete that
you know that I'm a really fan of the mitochondria. So improving the energy metabolism is really a very central piece, not just for hair health, but for us as human. Nobody want to be exhausted.
What's the number one hack for increasing this power plant of the mitochondria?
A kind of secret I open now is a fancy substance called pyrroloquinolinquinone, PQQ, and it's high concentrated in parsley and in cocoa beans. Cocoa beans are really exploding from PQQ, and this substance targets the energy producing line in mitochondria. It's a kind of anti-corrosive in a translated sense, and about 10,000-fold stronger than vitamin C. Nobody knows it, and you would not see it on any table on a food supplement. There are a few, but it's really very scarce on the market. And I love mitochondria, and I love cocoa and parsley. Not in this combination, but based on my knowledge that this PQQ is really in high concentration in cocoa
parsley and
parsley.
So the professor says go get cocoa leaves.
Yes.
Like it?
I love this, and this is something very practical that for sure anyone can probably do today. I want to take a look at the future, and I want to know what you are most excited about for the future. It can be an immediate future, what the emerging technologies, research, sciences, but you can also have a free round on me on what you expect to see in 100 years. Where, Mads, you will be around still to experience it when you'll be less than 150. We'll see about Dr. Stephan and myself.
Then we'll have to take another episode later on. I think stem cells is super fascinating and interesting. I interviewed a professor from Germany who told all about the stem cell research or stuff I'd heard about in the biohacking circle. She was like, that doesn't sound right, and that doesn't sound realistic. But then he explained about how you're going to be able to regenerate eyes as one of the early things. He says, we're far from there now, but it's going to happen. So stem cells for many different things, super fascinating. That's one of the things that gets me excited in the morning to think about the future. So that would be one of my top ones. I also believe 3D printing of organs. We're still not there either. But again, coming from the technology perspective and talking to people in that it's going to take a while, but we will manage to get there. I think someone got a heart, I don't know whether it was from a pig or whether it was 3D printed. He died shortly after, but he managed to actually survive at least some minutes. Again, we're not there yet. We want to survive more than some minutes. But I think those are two super exciting things when we look into the future.
Stephan?
Wow, so that's very visionary, but congrats to this. We will see. And so short-term vision. My vision is precision longevity. So
what is that?
The more we know how it works, the better and more precise we could target the pathways which really matter. So concrete, we already heard about senescence and senolytics. We already heard about mitochondria and energy support and how important this would be for hair growth and hair health. Precision longevity would mean that special products specifically target those pathways to get rid of zombie cells surrounding the generative zones in the hair follicles and supporting hair follicle mitochondria. So that's the next step and the meaning when I say precision longevity. Another very important step would be to do epigenetic-based age mapping in hair. Not to figure out only the hair age, but to build it up as a kind of biomarker of biological age for the entire organism. And for sure, you know it better than me. For sure, this could be a step in very near future to realize such a strategy.
How far are we away from controlling hair health one-to-one? Talk about hair loss, when people are losing it, is it a choice? Is it not? How far are we away from complete control here?
Complete control, I think that's nothing which human could do, but better understanding and better coping to build up a kind of hair resilience and understand how to improve the hair health robustness. These are visions which are very realistic, but the complete control, it's not a good idea. A good understanding and an improvement of robustness and resilience, I think these are goals which perhaps in 10 years we could reach.
Let's see. That's going to be exciting. Mads, you've written a book about habits and routines. Can you give our listeners one specific habit, it can be large, small, that our listeners can implement today that will have the most significant impact on longevity and hair health?
So it really depends on how their life is today. Like what is the most efficient thing, right? Zinc is good for hair as well. I think if I should say the one for longevity, not necessarily related to hair, is gratitude journal. So simply writing down 3 things you're grateful for every night. So no tech, you can do it on your well, I do it on my phone, but it's free. We know from studies that it changes your mindset, it changes how your brain is wired, and that probably also means that you're going to be more chilled if you can't get the hair back.
Perhaps surprising for you, it's not an ingredient or a supplement or something, but don't underestimate a positive mindset and positive mood. And so I'm completely with you. And meanwhile, some big population-based studies have indicated that a positive, not toxic positivity, but a positive mood is stronger than any pill in extension of your lifetime and also your health time. And so that's one advice around all these nitty-gritty informations we exchanged, which is very important for my life and which I would very openly propagate as a longevity mindset in its core.
So instead of focusing on the supplements fancy as ficetine, spermidine, NAD+, learn to cultivate a positive mindset. I think we can agree on that.
Yes.
Very inspiring. Thank you very much, both of you. This has been incredible. Before we wrap up, I want to do a very short true or false round, and I want your immediate answer and only true or false, okay? Ready? Stress can make you age faster and cause hair loss?
Yes.
Yes.
True. If your dad went bald, will you too?
Potentially.
Perhaps.
Wrong. Wrong answer. Okay. So
yeah, it's not a black-white question, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe there's something to influence that. What's one underrated lifestyle change that benefits both your lifespan and your hair?
Sleep.
Morning sunshine.
Are there any supplements we know of that can help your hair grow?
Zinc.
Biotin.
Are there any ingredients in our serum which stood out to you?
Not ingredients, but really the feeling on my scalp. And perhaps that's the consequence of the entire mixture and not a single ingredient. I don't know. But the feeling was really special. I like it.
I can't pronounce it, but vanillyl.
Bethyl ether.
Yeah. I had never heard about that before.
That's the tingling. That's the ingredient behind the tingling sensation. Some call it burning sensation.
Yes.
It's the feeling of the increased blood flow to your scalp.
Okay.
What's one trend people should stop wasting money on when it comes to hair and aging?
Fancy supplements, expensive and of low quality.
Yeah, low quality supplements. You rather save your money. They might have a negative effect instead.
Right.
Okay. Thank you both for answering all my questions and also both going very deep into the research, the science. Thank you both for that. And thank you for giving some very specific advice to myself and to our listeners. This has been incredibly interesting. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Niels. And thanks, Mats.